Strange Brow Radio, episode 13. I'm your host, Tobe Johnson. Today's guest, retired military Dave Emmons, out of Poulsbo, Washington. Dave, with classified secret intelligence, has also some incredible stories. So we're going to go there, UFOs, cryptids, and talk a little bit about what's going on right there in his own house nowadays. That's Dave Emmons in a minute. But first, thank you to our sponsor, Feral by Aaron at Etsy.com. Shaman-inspired drums, rattles, and smudge sticks. You can find those again at the Etsy shop. Also be setting up a table at the Primal People Convention this month in Enumclaw, Washington. Just type that into your little search in and look out for the Primal People Convention, Enumclaw, Washington, to see our sponsor, Feral by Aaron at Etsy.com. Okay. Next, Dave Emmons and his unique story. We'll be right back. Dave Emmons has always known, I guess you would say, that something unique and special has occurred around him. And it goes back beyond his own military experience. And I'll let Dave explain the details around that, but Dave and his wife Jody also lead a ET discussion group for contactees or abductees, however you want to slice that. I attended one of these meetings back in the early part of 2019. So they take this very serious. It's a selective group of people that show up at their house. And it goes without saying that the subject matter is very close to him and his wife's heart. So I'll let him fill in the details here, and we'll join in the discussion with Dave Emmons.
Well, it kind of started, I think, probably quite a long time ago, since I'm almost 70 now. And back in about 1957, I think that's about when I recollect I had my first paranormal experience. So I was about 7 or 8 years old, and I was living in Ohio at that time with my folks, obviously. And we had just moved into a new home that my father had built out in a wooded area outside of the town there. I grew up in a town about 300 people in northwest Ohio. And while I was there in the bedroom, I can remember we'd been living in there probably a month and a half or so. And one night I looked up, something woke me up, and I looked at the end of my bed, and there was a small being of some kind looking at me, kind of a triangular headed shape. And as I kind of jerked up and got a little scared, I think it just kind of suddenly disappeared. So after telling my folks and all, they thought I was crazy and dreaming and stuff. But stuff started happening around me a lot then. So throughout my life, I've had a lot of different types of paranormal experiences. I guess one of the, while I was still living in Ohio back in 1961, a bunch of my friends and I were camping in the woods on their farm that was near the town we lived in. And while we were camping that night, we all had 3 rocks tossed at us. And at first, we just kind of assumed it was their older brother, you know, how kids will be. And but upon picking up those rocks, we all discovered that, man, they weighed more than we could throw. And they were roughly, I think, if I remember right, they were about 8 inches in circumference, and they weighed around 10 pounds plus. And we also heard whooping noises that we thought were the brothers of the guys we were camping with. Well, we found out later that those guys weren't even around. They were at the different town over going to the movies that night, so it wasn't them. So we just kind of assumed from then on it was just some kind of bird. But now that I look back at it over these years, I don't think it was a bird. And then my family moved to Michigan, southeastern Michigan, around 1965, 66, a little bit before I graduated. So one Saturday in 1966, right after Thanksgiving, I was taking my date home from the drive-in movies, and when we pulled into her driveway, we saw this large creature standing there. She lived in a ranch-style house, which they call Rambler homes out here now. And so they had one of those little small vent windows that was about 8 inches long, maybe about 3 or 4 inches wide. It was up about 7 feet from the inside of the house, which made it about 8 feet off the ground from the outside, I guess. And this creature that we both saw was bent over looking into it. So it was at least 9 feet tall, maybe even taller. And it had reddish brown hair, but when I saw the headlights of our car, it turned around and looked right at us, and it had glowing red light eyes. But as soon as it saw us and saw the car coming in, it ran off to a swamp area that was about 35 feet from the side of the house. But it only took about 5 steps to get that 35 feet. And when we told people about it, nobody believed us, except for my maternal grandma. She had told me that I saw a Sasquatch and that I'd probably experience them later on. And let's see, probably then in 1974, I was in the military, and I was stationed over in England. And I was at RAF Alconbury. And where we were living, it was kind of like a Quonset hut, a little metal rounded tin roof, but the rooms were all blocked off inside and made into separate rooms for 2 people in each room. And one night, my roommate came home a little tipsy from the club, and as we were laying there, just barely got to sleep, we both saw an apparition come right through the wall, and it was wearing a top coat and a hat, and it sat on the end of his bed. That's what woke him up. And he looked up and he saw this same thing. Well, we didn't talk about it for a couple of weeks to each other. And then I don't know what we were talking about, but finally brought it up. And he said, "You mean you saw the same thing?" And I said, "Yeah, I saw it come through the wall, get up, and it walked right back out through that wall. Didn't go through the door." So we went and asked the first sergeant about it and found out that somebody meeting that description had hung themselves in that room. Well, the funny thing was, here back in 2016, I was working at a store in Port Gamble up here. It was called Mrs. Muir's House of Ghosts and Magic at the time. Of course, Port Gamble's fairly haunted anyhow. But this gentleman came walking in to the store, and he kind of looked around and he walked back out and came in about 5 minutes later again. I didn't know what was going on with this guy. And he walked right up to me and he says, "Do you believe in ghosts?" And I said, "Well, yeah, I do." And he said, "Well, I got to share a story with you." He says, "About 40 years ago or so," he says, "I was over in England," and he says, "I was in this barracks room and I saw this ghost come through a wall." And I says, "Were you at RAF Alconbury?" And he says, "Yeah, why?" And I says, "Well, you were in the Quonset hut right behind the clothing sales there." And he says, "Yeah, how did you know that?" And I said, "Well, because in 1974, I saw the same thing." Well, he'd seen it in 1970. So he had me call his wife because she had never believed him after he told her that. They lived over in the Emmons area, Everett, Emmons, somewhere over there. So we talked to her, and I finally convinced her that what he had seen was what everybody else had seen too. So there's been a lot of stuff throughout my life.
Yeah, no, you've touched on quite a bit before the age of 18, and now you're fast forwarding to people that
Yeah.
are basically finding you out. Just getting to the experience that you just described, Dave, as far as this guy walking up to you and just
Uh-huh.
mentioning a place in England. How in the world would that be coincidence?
Yeah. We couldn't figure it out either. It just kind of made the hair on my arms kind of stand up because it was really kind of that really validated it for me, but and of course for him. And the odd thing was Port Gamble is such a haunted town anyhow, and we do a lot of investigations up there. Uh, the Walker Ames home in Port Gamble is probably one of the most haunted here in Washington. In fact, I think it is even touted as one of the most haunted in Washington. I know Pete Orbea works for the town up there, and he leads the paranormal ghost conference every year up there, the annual ghost conference, and they do a great job up there at that paranormal ghost conference. But yeah, I don't think there's any doubt in my mind, especially since my roommate saw it, I saw it, the first sergeant knew about it, and then this guy here, 40-some years later, comes and tells me that he saw the same thing. That's where it really, really piqued my interest. And when I came back here to the States, I started going on these different, learning how to do investigations and try to find other stuff. And I was fortunate enough to get stationed at Vandenberg Air Force Base in California in 1975, and it was right close to the La Purísima mission, which was one of the older Spanish missions in California. And it's very haunted. I've done probably 7 or 8 investigations there. Experienced a lot of paranormal activity, everywhere from Native Americans to the actual monks that were stationed there. So it was really strange. But also while at Vandenberg, that's where I got to experience some of my, I think, my first actual UFOs. I worked in for the Air Force there for 5 years, from 1975 to 1980. I was with the actual Air Force in the photo squadron there, the audiovisual squadron. And we processed the film that came off the radar trackers and the film trackers that for the missile launches at Vandenberg. And 3 times in that 5 years while we were there, I know of, armed guards showed up after we processed the film and picked it up and took it away. I have no idea where they took it, but they were armed guards, and that was very unusual since the other films that we processed were left alone and for different launches. It was just on 3 separate occasions that they picked up the film and took it off. I'm assuming, now that I've witnessed a lot of the launches there between 1975 and 2005 when I retired, that it probably was showing some activity, such as UFO activity, because there was numerous times you could go out in the parking lots and watch the launches, and you'd see several silver metallic objects tracking around the missile as it was going up, or even before, and lots of people. So I mean, we're talking hundreds of people, hundreds of support staff, but it was so commonplace when you went out to see these around missile launches that nobody really talked about them much anymore.
That's got to be so hard for the average listener to understand or even believe.
Yeah,
Uh, you're here on a base watching a missile take off. You see what looks like I guess we'd call it an aerial threat. That seems to be the new jargon for describing UFOs. So you see these aerial threats. At no point did anybody, have concern over seeing something watching a missile launch.
I'm sure that there were people, but not at the level I was at. I got a feeling that's probably why these films that I know of were taken away by armed guard. it happened quite a lot. The radar trackers would track things that weren't reported to the public. I know that for a fact. There was a big book that was written about different encounters that was in the technical library there at Vandenberg that you could get access to. And it was a pretty thick book. So I don't know. It's strange. Nobody really talks about it. I was never really threatened to not talk about it. It's just that I guess it was so commonplace that nobody talks about it, I guess. I did have another weird paranormal experience on Vandenberg. I lived in base housing out there with my first wife in 1978. I was still in the military, so I was given base housing. And those sliding closet doors that kind of slide together.
Yeah, the extremely well-built ones in military housing.
Yeah.
Yes, I know those ones very well.
Yeah. Well, we had a closet door in our master bedroom that kept sliding open all the time at night, and it would only do it at night. And it took quite an effort to get those. They were kind of warped. It took an effort to open them. Like I said, my first wife, I witnessed that a lot. You could actually hear them slide if you were the one trying to do it. And that's what woke us up, and you could watch it slide open and it stay open. We'd get up and close it, close the door, go back to bed, and it would slide open again. It was very, very, very strange. We didn't see any apparitions or anything, but it was unexplainable why that could open, because you really had to yank on it to pull it open.
Let's go back, Dave, to 7 or 8 years old, and you describing this triangle-headed visitor. That's your earliest memory, it seems, of a paranormal life.
Yeah.
And since then, you've had a potpourri of what I would call cryptid experiences, UFO, ghost experience.
Oh, yeah. I sure have.
So let's start there. At 7 or 8 years old, you have a memory of a triangle-headed being. At any point, did you call out for your folks? And if so,
yes.
what was their response? And do you have any inkling to think that they knew what was going on and maybe were experiencers themselves?
No, I would say my dad was a real skeptic. My mom and dad, I remember them coming running in the room, but the being or whatever it was, like I say, it just like vanished before that, and I couldn't explain how it vanished. It just kind of dematerialized, kind of like you see on what is it, Star Trek? No,
Sure.
When they beam me up, Scotty.
Right.
That's the kind of the little glittering type thing. That's what it did. And I couldn't explain it at the time. I hadn't seen Star Wars, and obviously, or Star Trek, it hadn't been on yet. But that's what it did. It kind of just dematerialized like that and disappeared. And when I told my folks about it, they told me I was crazy. That's the only time I did see it in the house there. However, we did have like strange lights every once in a while out through the woods back behind the house. They kind of went around, but it could have been headlights from cars from our neighbor pulling into their driveways and stuff. So we didn't think much about it, but it happened quite a bit.
And did you see those lights in that area until you were much older than 8, or did you leave your family home early on?
Well, we left there probably in 1960. We only lived there for about 3 years, and we moved back in with my grandparents in the town.
Right.
But for the 3 years we were there, we definitely saw the lights. It wasn't a regular nightly thing. It was like once every 6, 7, 8 months. You'd see these lights and kind of flashing around. There was nothing back there in that wooded area, cornfields and stuff on both sides of the wooded area. But there was nothing back there that would make people go back there, unless the one option that I'm thinking of now that it could have been was there was a lot of raccoon hunters back then in that area, and sometimes they carried lanterns, sometimes they had big lights.
Right.
So if there was hunters back there at night, because that was legal back there to go raccoon hunting at night, if that's what it was, then that would explain why the lights were flashing around up in the trees and stuff.
Sure. Right.
But
And
it
it's
was a
seven
pretty
or eight.
powerful light.
Yeah, it's 7 or 8 years old. How fresh is all this in your memory?
Pretty fresh.
Pretty fresh.
Yeah, I can't say I'm a real skeptic because I consider myself a researcher, not I try to look at everything and try to try to explain it away. Try to make it to where it's not what I think is the obvious answer of the paranormal part of it. So I guess you could say from the paranormal investigations that I've done, I've always tried to look for every possible thing that it could be. And some things I just can't explain away. And those that I actually see with my own eyes, I know I can't explain them away because they're there. I'm definitely sure of it.
And how deeply have you gone to try to retrieve all those memories from 7 or 8 years old, or is it even something you want to do?
I haven't gone into hypnosis. I've thought about it to see if I could find out any more about it. I have not done that. I'm not sure if I want to. I'm pretty much content with what I'm doing now in my life and the experiences that I've had.
Mm-hmm. Well, looking at the triangle head alone, is that in your mind the same thing that you would describe as kind of like an oblong egg shaped as well? I mean, are we talking a small little gray, or in your memory, how do you describe this alien in more detail, or can you?
Okay. It had a thin neck coming up. Like I say, it was like peeking over the top end of my bed. Mm-hmm. And fairly large eyes, but I didn't see a mouth on it or a nose. I think it was more because I was scared more than anything. But when I glared at it, it just glared back at me, and I didn't really get a good feeling from it until about right before it disappeared, and right before my folks ran into the room or opened the door and came into the room. Then I felt like it wasn't going to hurt me. It felt like it was just there watching me. But when my folks opened the door, like I say, it just went boom, it dematerialized.
Do you remember any sense of it, Dave, trying to communicate with you on any level?
No, I don't. Like I say, it was just looking at me, staring at me. And my first reaction was fear, but that was very brief. And after that, it just kind of felt like it was just there.
Mm-hmm. So the little guy or a little gal or whatever we're going to call this little...
Yeah, I have no idea if it was male or female.
Little thing. You never touched it. You never had a chance to, it sounds like.
No.
Yeah.
No.
And it never came back, but you experienced the lights. The lights that you're describing, what kind of lights were they? Were they bright, and diffused? Were they high up?
They were pretty bright. That's one of the reasons that kind of worries me about the raccoon hunting, because we didn't carry that bright of lights when I was a raccoon hunter. We kind of took a lantern and a flashlight. That was about it. These were pretty bright, like a modern day spotlight.
Mm-hmm.
Not a aircraft light, but like a car spotlight. That's why I said it might have been headlights, but why would it be up in the trees and going around? So.
Mm-hmm. And now, would you bring dogs if you're raccoon hunting? Is that something else? So you would have you probably would have heard dogs if that were the case, right?
Yeah, absolutely. In fact, we had a couple there. I had a couple raccoon dogs at the house that we were at.
Right.
And they stayed in the garage, but we had a doggy door between the garage and our main part of the house, and they would sleep in the garage at night.
And then fast forward here between the ages of 8 and 9 to 18, it sounds like you had at least two Sasquatch experiences from what you described.
Yes, yeah, that's what I'm thinking. One of them was I actually saw it for the first time. Actually, that's the only time I've ever seen one. So there was no doubt of it. Like I said, my grandmother believed me, and she told me what it was. My grandmother was a Native American on the maternal side. My maternal grandmother was Native American, and she was probably my favorite grandmother of the two. I spent a lot of time with her whenever I could, listening to stories and things with her. But
do you remember?
She told me that
go ahead. Sorry, Dave.
Oh, yeah, she's the one that told me that I would experience it again later, and boy, have I.
Right. So you're the mind that once you're visited, you're kind of marked?
I think so. That's what I truly believe. From what I've read and what I hear from other people, friends of mine that have experienced the same thing, I think that is a true statement.
And so your grandmother is Native American, probably has an oral tradition of at least the knowledge of Sasquatch, Bigfoot. And do you remember at all if she had a unique name for the phenomena? Did she describe it in any other terms, maybe based on her tribal oral tradition and what they're
No, she didn't. She just told me for sure that I would experience it more. She was kind of a healer. She was a remarkable woman. I really miss her. She lived into her hundreds, and she was quite a lady.
Did she ever do any healing on you?
Oh yeah.
And she did.
Yep. When I was about, I guess 12, I sprained my ankle in a basketball game, enough to where I couldn't walk at all. I couldn't even get off the court floor. My dad had to come down onto the court and pick me up and carry me off. And it was on a Saturday, and we didn't go to the hospital. We went straight to my grandmother's house, and they took me down into the basement and laid me on she had a table with a mat on it there, and she came down, and everybody else left from downstairs, and she lit some incense, and she did her thing, and she took some rocks and stuff, and I was down there with her probably an hour, and she was singing all kinds of weird things, stuff that I can't even remember what they were, but I got up and walked out of there.
Wow, so you're describing that she had like a little treatment area down in the basement. Is that?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So she worked with people around the neighborhood. People knew that she was a medicine woman.
Yeah, they knew that she was a healer. Yeah.
And what tribe? Do you know what tribe she was with?
She was Potawatomi.
Potawatomi. And what area is that again?
That was in Northwest Ohio.
Okay.
Maybe 20, 25 miles from the Michigan border.
Okay. Well, that area is just so rich with sightings. I mean, that's where one of the bigger conferences is, of course, is out in Salt Fork. Are we talking near Salt Fork at all?
No, it was near Toledo.
Okay.
If you went straight up from there, you'd run into about Jackson, Michigan. So, yeah, it was near Toledo. It was about 40 miles from Toledo. 35, 40 miles from Toledo.
So now let's go to 1974. You're in the military, and are you overseas when this apparition, this hat man, appeared?
Yes, I was in England at RAF Alconbury.
RAF, that's right, Royal Air Force Base. Okay, and I'm of course an old Navy guy from Whidbey Island, so we both are used to being on air stations. So you described something really similar.
My dad was Navy.
What's that, Dave?
My dad was Navy. He was a chief.
Oh, okay. Great. Yeah, I was an enlisted man, and I
Yeah.
actually got out in 2001 as the World Trade Center was crumbling down. So that was my
Oh,
discharge
wow.
date. So it was quite a remarkable day. Well, I guess
Oh,
none of us will ever forget that
none
day.
of us.
Certainly leave.
Absolutely.
Yeah, yeah. Having your discharge orders, when there's a national emergency is something else. But when you describe this apparition, I couldn't help but thinking of the standard, what they call Hat Man, which is a global phenomena. Had you ever heard that
Hmm.
term before?
Nope.
Okay.
Never heard of that
So
one.
there's books, there's movies, there's whole subcultures related to what is called the Hat Man. And then it sounds like
Mhm.
you had someone senior above you say, well, there's somebody that died in this room, and kind of explain it as that. But the Hat Man does a lot of what you said. It has a very tall, ominous, blacker than black appearance to it. It kind of hovers over the bed like a classical
Yeah.
shadow person report, and then it has, this very distinguished.
This,
Go ahead.
yeah, this apparition wasn't real black. It was you could actually see it defined. It looked like a smoky gray, grayish brown coat that it was wearing, and the hat was more of a little bit darker than that, and the head area was more of a cloudy type grayish white. You could actually see features on it. You could see the nose and eyes and a mouth. It looked like a human. The only thing it didn't have is it didn't have feet. There was no feet showing.
How long did you get a look at it?
Probably 3 or 4 minutes.
What? Oh my gosh! I just dropped my pen. That's so rare to have a sighting that long.
Yep, that's what made it seem very bizarre at the time. Uh, I think only because of my upbringing and my previous other experiences and everything. I think that's probably why it didn't really shock me that much. I've been doing a lot of reading about that type of paranormal with ghosts and all.
Mm-hmm.
And being in England, of course, I'd been there over a year already when this happened, and I'd been to many pubs that had claimed that they were haunted and actually experienced some paranormal activity in a lot of the pubs over there, but nothing to this degree that this was.
Right. Well, no. Well, so what do you think you saw?
I think I saw a man that hung himself in that room.
Mm-hmm.
I think it was a spirit that, for one reason or another, it may be imprinted, or it may be that he just didn't want to leave there yet, and
Mm-hmm.
he kept coming back to that same room. I don't think it was an imprinted energy, because I do believe that all ghostly activity like that is energy, and I do believe they exist.
Were you able to? You said you're able to see distinguishing shapes on it. You could even see color. You
Hmm.
could see the outline of not only the figure, but you could see clothing on it. So,
Right.
what did the face look like, and was it trying to communicate at all?
It wasn't trying to communicate, like I say. It sat on the end of the bed, so its back was turned toward me. Uh, my roommate actually got to see more of the front of him than I did.
I see. I
I
see.
only saw the front of him when he came into the room. I actually saw him come in through the block wall,
Mm-hmm.
turn around, and sit on the bed. Uh, at first, I thought he came through the door because it was real close to the door where he came through,
Mm-hmm.
and I was wondering how he did that since the door was locked. But uh, feature-wise, like I said, you could see his nose and you could see a mouth, and his eyes were, I won't call them beady looking, but they were, yeah, maybe they were beady looking, I guess. Pretty close to that. I guess that's the only way to describe it.
Were they eyes of any color, or how would you describe that?
I would say that they were kind of blackish,
Hmm. And your roommate was
but they were
was
small. They were real small.
they were small. Okay, so almost like a
Yeah,
little rat or something. Okay.
right. Yeah.
And your roommate was chosen over you. He didn't
Oh
sit
yeah.
on your bed.
Oh no.
Yeah. And so now let's fast forward here to you working in Port Gamble. You're an employee at the Miss Muir's House of Ghost and Magic, and a stranger walks in and starts retelling of this memory here. Now, is this the same guy that had the ghost sit on his bed, or is this was 5 years
No.
earlier, right?
No. This is a guy that I had never met before,
Uh-huh.
but obviously he was there in England 4 years before me.
Gotcha.
Uh, uh, it was quite interesting. There was a lot of things that happened at that store. It was called the Jackson House, and it was built by Daniel Jackson, who was a ship's captain. He owned a fleet from out of Seattle, so he would be the guy that kind of towed the wood from the lumber yard and all that for him. He would also bring in the mail
Mm-hmm.
by boat to them because there was no roads back there to Port Nettle at that time. And but that home that he built was quite haunted too. There's been apparition sightings there. Uh, we could feel it when we first moved into that store, and we were just setting it up. There was the upstairs was unupdated. There was nothing on the walls. Some of the electrical wires were still showing through the walls and all.
Mm-hmm.
So it hadn't been brought up to code. Let me put it that way on the upstairs. So we couldn't use the upstairs for anything except a little bit of storage.
Right.
And the only thing that was up there was one of those old Navy desks. Now you'll be familiar with that. You know how heavy those are.
Sure.
I don't know how they got it up the small tiny stairs, but they did. And there was a couple of Navy file cabinets, so it looked like it was surplus type stuff. Well, this old Navy desk was up there in one of the rooms, and we were downstairs. We knew nobody was upstairs, and we heard that desk slide. And so I ran upstairs to see who was up there. And nobody was up there, but the desk had moved about 3 feet, all by itself. No earthquake, no nada. And so I came back downstairs. My wife is a medium. Uh, she didn't get anything at that time of any uh, energy type beings or anything up in that room. But a gentleman that you got coming on to your show here in August, Mr. William Becker, is very familiar with that place. Became a good friend of mine. He's had a lot of experiences in that house.
Okay, great. So you have a friendship with William Becker, and if anybody has any questions about what Dave is referring to, William will be speaking and actually teaching a class in Cottage Grove, Oregon on the second Friday of August is the 2-hour class. It starts sometime around 6 or 7 in the evening. You can go to strangebrow.com to find out more regarding that. So Dave, you've had an extraordinary life, and it's obvious that
Yeah,
you have kind of, like I say, been marked by the supernatural, the spirit world, the paranormal, and then you meet Jody. So that's a pretty remarkable moment when you two meet, especially if she's a psychic and she's had her own ET communication. So describe how you two met.
we met at work. We both worked for a defense contractor, and this was after I got out of the service and got divorced. And I met her at my new job, defense contracting, in Santa Maria, California, near the Vandenberg Air Force Base. And we knew each other about 3 years, and then we decided to get married. And so we did. uh, it was kind of interesting. She's ran an ET group like she does up here. She ran one in Santa Maria at the time. I couldn't participate at the time. I had a security clearance that I wanted to maintain so I could continue working. But she ran a fairly large group of about 100 people or more. I did go to a couple of her meetings. One of them in particular was of interest because there was two gentlemen in the back sitting there with the textbook Men in Black. They were sitting with hats, sunglasses, and dark suits, and unexpressionable faces, and you could see them plain as day, and everybody was looking at them, turning around and trying to see what they were doing, but they just sat there. And right after the meeting, they vanished. They were gone. So I was hoping to go to the back of the room and try to approach them at that time, but they were out of there right after that meeting. It was interesting, though. We did find out that about a week later, our home phone was tapped.
How does one find out that their home phone's tapped?
I have friends in high places.
Mm-hmm.
We had equipment. We heard it clicking all the time. When you pick up the phone, you'd hear it click.
Right.
And so I kind of suspected that that's what it was. I worked in intelligence in the military. And I had a friend come over with some electronic gear, and we found out that the phones were tapped. And once we found out the phones were tapped and we started acknowledging it when we were talking to our friends on the phone, since you're probably being recorded, about 3 weeks later, that it all stopped.
So, okay, do you think they were interested in the fact that you had a security clearance and you're also experiencing stuff that generally those two don't mesh real well? You have any inkling
I think,
on who was tapping your
yeah,
phone?
I think they were more interested in my wife, Jody, because she ran that UFO group. And right after that, we found out about the tapping and all, she turned the group over to someone else and she quit participating. So I think that's when it went away.
So that kind of scared her off from.
I think so.
What was?
Yeah.
So is this the first time that she's come back in a while to start a discussion group?
Yep. And we both agreed at this time and at our age, it doesn't matter.
Right. Well, was that a hard decision to come to, or were you both just ready to do it?
No, I think we were both ready to do it.
Mm-hmm. Well, let's talk about the ET discussion group then.
Okay.
As far as what I experienced there, I think we were there for over a couple hours. I can tell you that generally when I'm involved with something long format and it has to do with the supernatural and it's like minds all in the same room, and you'll find this too with something like, in the Judeo-Christian belief, there's a belief that where two or three or more gather in the name of the Father, there he'll be, or there the angels will be. And I find that to work also for all of these type of discussions as well. It is almost like a moment of meditation or prayer when you start digging into the nature of the soul, or what is, the great mystery. Why are we here? Those kind of things are reminiscent of prayer, at least in my mind. And after we had left your ET discussion group, there was some supernatural stuff that happened back at Aaron's place. And I just wondered if anybody else experienced anything after the ET discussion group. Did anybody ever say, after the group, such and such happened?
Yeah. There was a couple of people that have experienced some awakenings.
Mm-hmm.
One of the members was experiencing quite a bit.
Mm-hmm.
of ET type stuff, yeah,
Mm-hmm.
and paranormal type stuff.
Mm-hmm.
I don't want to go into it because I haven't asked her for permission,
Mm-hmm.
but yeah,
Mm-hmm.
she definitely is awakening. I'll put it that way.
Well, and let's just describe here for the audience what we're talking about. We're talking about people that have normal everyday jobs who need a place to go with other people who are in the same predicament, or at least the same blessing as them, however you want to describe this. And it's very difficult. It's kind of the same thing that I do when I do a live event, but this is a private event. It's invite only. You can't just show up. And, for obvious reasons, you kind of have to know and vet the people that are coming and make sure that their motivations are good and everybody feels safe. Is that a fair way to put it?
That's perfect. Yeah.
Okay. So what about around your own property? You guys have stuff happen right at your house.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. We've had like-minded individuals over a lot, and there's a lot happening on this property back here. This little 2 acres that we got back in here. I've had this is where I had my one and only Washington Bigfoot experience. Uh, it was back in just a couple of years ago during the summer. I was laying in bed with the window open here along this, and I got a little driveway along the side of the house here where the window is. And well, you've seen my driveway; it's about 200 feet long. And I heard what sounded like loud footsteps coming up this driveway, like somebody was running, and it kept getting louder and louder and louder. And it was like boom, 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 and it went right past the window. And when it got back, we got a little medicine wheel back out here that I rebuilt. And when it got to there was this big flash of light that kind of lit up the whole inside of the house, but it was just instantaneous. It was like a split second, and don't know what that was.
Right.
I don't know. You read things that says that describes what a portal is. I don't know if that's true or not. We've had a couple other spiritual type people come out on the property here that have told us, yes, we do have a portal on our land here somewhere.
Mm-hmm.
And who knows? But I'm pretty sure that we do have visitations from a Sasquatch on occasion. Like I say, my wife is a medium, and here about last year, just a few months ago, back in 2018, she was sitting in a chair and we were watching TV and all, and she all of a sudden she gets this buzzy feeling. I don't know if you've ever watched Teresa Caputo, the Long Island medium, on television.
Oh,
she says
sure.
she starts biting her lip and all that. Well, my wife kind of does the same thing. She gets this fuzzy feeling through her hair when she gets these things. And something was trying to talk to her telepathically. So she asked who it was and found out it was a Sasquatch. And she said, well, where are you? And we have a memorial tree that we planted for her father's death out by our garage area over here. And the being told her that he was out by the tree because he likes it out there. And the next morning I went out there, and right around the tree I found 3 white rocks that were placed right side by side, pointing right at the tree. Those weren't there before.
And so how are the rocks laid? They were laid equal distance apart.
Well, they were right side by side.
Mm-hmm.
I can actually I can send you a picture of them actually.
Mm-hmm.
They in fact, I think I showed it to you.
Right.
But,
And you said there's
yeah.
three of them?
Yeah, there was 3 of them, and
Mm-hmm.
they were touching each other, but they were made like in a line.
Mm-hmm.
And those weren't there the day before, because I was out there in that tree the day before.
Mm-hmm.
And the morning after she was talking or whatever this was out by the tree, there they were.
So what did you do with the rocks?
I left them there.
Mm-hmm.
Since then, we tried to set up some communication. I have a communication log that I've been attempting to communicate with whatever out in our wetland area over here by using branches and some colored glass rocks. And I set those up, but I haven't had any activity there other than a squirrel.
What about
And
inside the house, Dave? Anything occurring inside?
not that I'm aware of, not that I can remember. I have had experiences on the outside of the house,
Mm-hmm.
nearest the wetlands, to where I've been walking and I hear my name called by both a male and a female voice, and
Really?
they just shout out Dave,
Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
and there's nobody around, and I look and there's nobody anywhere, not even my neighbors, who are quite a ways distance away.
What's
In
your
fact, they
feeling?
were out of.
What's your feeling on documenting any of this, Dave? Do you document any of this stuff? Are you
Yes,
interested in that?
I write it down.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, I write it down like I would with any other. I treat it like an investigation, like a paranormal investigation.
Mm-hmm.
We keep journals. We
Right.
keep journals of this stuff. Yeah. For a while, we were having acorn or not acorn, pine cone needles or pine cones thrown at the house just to get our attention. It was nothing malevolent or anything like that.
Mm-hmm.
But and it was only on my wife's side of the house. She sleeps in a separate bedroom because I snore pretty good.
Is this all times a day that this is happening?
Usually in the evening. During the day is when I get the voices
Mm-hmm.
calling my name,
Mm-hmm.
or you'll hear some branches crack or some trees break.
Mm-hmm.
We get that a lot. We had one of the discussions groups. We had a different type of discussion group here one night, and it was in the summertime. We had the windows open, and this other lady that was here, she kept feeling like somebody was watching her through the kitchen window, and we heard this branch break. It was about a 4-inch round branch, and it just snapped about 6 feet up and just snapped over. I didn't see that until the next day, but
Wow.
and she's the one that heard it. But she said she could feel like something was watching the back of her head. She was sitting at the kitchen table with the window open.
So what do you think the relationship is between the paranormal and Sasquatch and UFOs and ghosts? Do you think there's any relationship to any of this?
I think that the ghosty world is a little bit separate. That's my opinion. I believe Sasquatch is forest people. I believe they exist. I like Ron Moorhead's description with the quantum physics part of it. I'm kind of a believer in that area of it.
Mm-hmm.
I think they were here before us. I don't think that they're here to hurt us unless
Right.
we try to hurt them first.
Mm-hmm.
I'm positive that I could never shoot one.
Mm-hmm.
I hope that nobody else does either. I think that someday, maybe not in my lifetime, but sometime shortly thereafter, I think that all of this is going to become known. I think that eventually it will be proven that they do exist in the scientific world, which seems to be that's the only way that anybody accepts it, which I'm not really that much of a follower of. I believe that what I've seen and what I've experienced, there's no doubt in my mind of what they are.
As far as the phenomena, let's just call all of what we just discussed for the last hour the phenomena. Why the secret? Why so late into the game here when let's just face it, religion is waning, and science and pluralism is taking over. Everybody believes in pretty much technology. That's the agreed
Mhm.
upon. That's kind of the agreed upon God right now, is artificial intelligence, which for better or for worse is a fact. So why isn't the government, uh, uh, disclosing this even more so than they did in 2017?
My feeling is that it's all based on fear.
Hmm.
Uh, I feel that I feel that there's many things that they could be doing that they're not doing because they're making money at it. They want to protect themselves, and it's kind of like, I don't know. I think it's just all fear based.
Right. So as far as your experiences are concerned, you don't have the feeling of any repercussions from your pension or for Jody's
No,
sake with the Men in Black to discuss this.
no,
There's not been any
no,
retribution thus far for having these ET discussion groups.
no.
No. Well, let's hope it stays
I
that
think that I think they figure we're old and probably a little crazy.
way.
Uh, but if we are, there's a lot of us,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
I think there's more getting every day.
Hmm. Well, Dave, I appreciate your time, and I want to thank you for coming on and sharing your experience with other people, because in the end, really all we have is one another. Nobody's really coming in here to educate us. All we have really is one another to share these experiences with. And I think there's so many missing puzzle pieces that we could help hand one another. And I see the community unfortunately so dysfunctional that handing over information is almost just a luxury item if you can ever get it. And
Yeah.
I'm so glad that you guys are doing that for others. You did it for me and Aaron and the other people that you invited in your home. So I really appreciate it. And if anybody's listening and wants to get involved or help out, or even be a presenter or speaker at one of your groups, even virtually, is there any way that others around the world could kind of communicate with you and Jody regarding your discussion group or anything else you're involved with?
Well, since the ET group is kind of a private group on Facebook, it'd
Hmm.
be kind of hard to contact us that way.
Hmm.
But uh, yeah, we really don't have we haven't really talked about that
Hmm.
way. It's
Okay.
been kind of a word of mouth for the local area.
Hmm.
Uh, I don't know how big she wants to take it.
Well, let me ask
Uh,
you this. What if someone wanted to start their own group? What would you suggest to them and how would they start?
um, Kind of like we did,
Hmm.
with like-minded folks, uh, friends of friends,
Hmm.
and get it going from there. We uh, we have a really good friend that runs the Awakening Heart, which is a very spiritual uh, group. Mahela, uh, she's she's almost like, I call her a shaman. she she's quite a lady, and she uh, she runs a lot of the activities here at our house uh,
Hmm.
for herself because it gives her a place to run things. And I had plenty of parking, but yeah, I would say, yeah, just go ahead and get with your like-minded friends and start it that way, and then go by word of mouth, and it'll build. It'll build quickly.
Right. I think
That,
they call it your sphere of influence. So if you have an inkling to do this yourself, folks, reach out to me at strangebrowradio@gmail.com, and I can maybe point out a few things along the way and facilitate at least a start to have your own group discussion, be it an ET discussion group or an afterlife discussion group, whatever seems out of the box, fringy, you can kind of find me interested in it. So I definitely will respond to your email. But Dave, I appreciate your time coming on here. We'll be in touch.
Well, thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah. Can't hardly wait to see you again.
Yeah. We'll be touching bases soon here. And I tell you what, I will try to make one of your next meetings here and post all
Yeah,
about
we're going to
it.
try to get down to. We're going to try to get down to the Axe and Chisel too, and get to one of yours.
Oh, good. And maybe you could come to the ESETI retreat.
Yeah, I'm thinking about that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we were thinking about that, going out there and maybe camping out there.
Yeah.
And for the night or whatever. But yeah, we really like Cottage Grove. So.
Well, great. Cottage Grove likes you back.
Yeah, that's one of my wife's favorite areas. So we stop down there all the time when we head to California to see our relatives down there.
Okay, great. Well, I've got friends up there. You got friends down here. We'll meet in the middle. And if we have to do it at a rest stop with a big gulp, then we'll do it that way. But you've heard Dave Emmons. Dave Emmons is part of the ET discussion group, a lifelong experiencer. His wife, Jody Emmons. How do you say Jody's middle name?
Lynn.
Okay. I'm going to say Jody Emmons.
There you go.
Jody Emmons of Mystical Spirit Creations. And are those her little creations that she makes? Are those available on any website or anything?
Yeah, they're Mystical Spirit Creations website.com.
Okay.
And she's also on Facebook, Mystical Spirit Creations.
Okay.
And we're the end of this month. We'll be at the in Seaside, Oregon, at the Oregon Ghost Conference.
Oh, great. And that's a huge conference, folks. It's, literally over 1,000 people show up to that. And it's just a massive, massive like-minded party on the oceanfront. Seaside, if you don't know, is where Lewis and Clark basically threw down their camping gear and said, we reached our goal, now let's head back. And so there's a lot of history in and around Astoria and Seaside. So I suggest getting your butt out to Seaside for the Oregon Ghost Conference and look for Dave Emmons and Jody while you're there. Anyway, Dave, I appreciate your time. Yeah, it was good talking to you, and we'll talk later.
All right, thanks.
All right, thank you, Dave, for joining us. And next, I'm coming after your wife to get her on the show, because she's got quite a story as well. And her ET discussion group may reap some benefits as far as future interviews. We'll see what happens. I know it's a pretty close-knit group, and it's a non-disclosure kind of situation. But if we can, we'll go there and talk in depth more about this ET discussion group and the members of it, on or off the record. If you would like to be on the show yourself, or you have some suggestions, guest ideas, topics, and such, or if you'd like to just talk about anything regarding our previous subjects, I guess we could do that as well. We could open up the forum a little bit. Get a hold of me at strangebrowradio@gmail.com. You can go on Facebook, on Instagram, and look us up also at strangebrow.com. We have a live event coming up here on the 13th of April with painter and life after death experiencer Robert Kanaga. That's at the Axe and Fiddle in Cottage Grove, Oregon, 657 East Main Street. Robert will be live on stage starting around 3 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, and I'm going to try to stream this as well on the Strange Brow Radio Facebook page, or maybe the Strange Brow Radio Instagram page. I'll make an announcement about that. But as always, thank you for joining us. Thank you to our sponsor, Feral by Aaron, ERYN at Etsy.com. You guys take care of yourself. We're in the middle of a flood watch here in the Willamette Valley, so I gotta go blow up a rubber raft and throw all my belongings and run for the hills. I sure hope not. All right. We'll see you in the trees.